Good evening, Mom. How are you? You're watching CU at USC. I'm your host, Daniel DiMaso, and tonight we have filmmaker Rachel Fleischer and singer-songwriter Blake Collins. Stay tuned. Welcome back to CU. Again, we have Rachel Fleischer and Blake Collins with us. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for
having us.
Yeah, right before we started talking, you were telling me that the last time you were in this building was for class here.
It was for class here. I was a sophomore, so I think that would have made it 2000.
Wow, excellent.
Wow.
What's it like to be back?
It's really great. It's very different,
Yeah.
but it feels really nice to be back here.
A lot has changed, I'm guessing. Not too much.
A lot. I mean, ultimately the vibe still feels the same, but all of the area around it, all the restaurants, was not as hip when I was,
Hopefully a little safer, maybe.
I would hope so.
Right.
Yeah, the eating options are vastly superior.
Yes.
Yeah, we only had like a couple of options, and they were really, really terrible.
Right.
So this is better.
So you guys actually had a fun story you wanted to share about how you two met. Do you want to run me through that, Blake?
Sure. Well, first of all, what you have to know is we met many, many years ago through a mutual friend, briefly, where we learned of each other's creative work, and then we didn't see each other for about 10 years. Then we kind of met on New Year's Eve. I remember it happening. Rachel doesn't remember.
Not have remembered
she
everything.
doesn't remember that happening.
How old are you at this time? Is this in college or is it?
At this point, I'm
This is
28.
post-college.
Okay.
I was probably like 31.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, then a couple months later, we meet properly and catch up again. And I remind her that we met, only 2 months ago. She doesn't remember. That's how we start. That's how we start our conversation with an embarrassing admission that she doesn't remember.
Sure.
So we started talking about our film work and our music work, and in the course of the conversation, we started talking about music that Rachel had been making over the years, and that at that point in my musical career, I was producing other people and really getting my hands dirty with being behind the scenes, as it were. So we decided to have a listen to her demos and started working together on arranging some of her songs, cleaning them up a little bit, and then we decided we're going to produce an album.
It began as a working relationship,
Yep.
as a collaboration for the music.
That's right.
And it sort of developed.
Then it became a friendship.
Okay.
And then it became a romance.
Excellent, excellent.
And now we're married.
It's incredible. It sounds like the plot to Walk the Line, the movie about Johnny Cash and June Carter. Is that what it feels like?
No.
No, I don't think so. But, it's not completely different.
Sure. I mean, you guys have worked together a lot on various projects. What is it like, waking up, going through the day together, and then coming home and putting work aside and just coming to family? Is it a blossoming relationship for you guys to work together all day? Or
sure.
Yeah, it's the most natural, intuitive thing, I think. I always wanted, my whole life, even when I was really little, I always knew that the person I wanted to be with would be someone I would also collaborate with. And so it feels very natural and like a huge blessing that we get to work together.
Growing up, how did each of you come into music, and how did you find that as sort of your form of expression?
Music found me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have it around me growing up at home, except for, just hearing it when my parents were maybe playing music on the radio or something, but they're not musicians. So the desire to play music kind of found me at a really early age. And I was really lucky to have a family that was supportive and encouraged me to play and practice and have band practice at home and record at home. And
what was the first instrument that you picked up?
I I don't remember at this point. A piano, and it was quite a few.
A heavy
a 6-year-old had never.
Yeah,
I was the
right.
first one to do that.
Whistling,
and then
right?
oh, whistling was really my first form of
Interesting.
musical expression.
Okay.
At about, I don't know, 9 months old or a year. I wasn't whistling anything coherent, but it was,
Sure. And what about yourself, Rachel?
I was lucky to also have very supportive parents, but also parents who were both musical. So I grew up in a very musical, creative environment. So my dad was always playing music. My mom was always playing music.
Yeah.
My dad would always have friends over who were musicians. So we would always just be jamming and making up songs together from the time before I can even remember.
Right.
So it was I think I learned piano. That's really the only thing I can play. And sing. And so I started writing songs when I was about 10. I mean, I would make stuff up before, but.
Did the passion for music or for film come first?
Film.
Film. How did you get started in film? You obviously went to the film school here.
I did. I just always, for as long as I can remember, I guess, film found me too. I feel sort of that way. I just always remember watching movies and feeling really moved by them. And then I was also lucky to have a dad who's an actor, so I got to be around those types of people, and I got to actually go to a film set that a movie my dad was in when I was probably 7, and I think that sealed the deal. It was actually Zemeckis and Spielberg. It was, so it was very appropriate that we're talking about.
And we found out, Mark, your PR guy actually just informed us a few minutes ago that your dad was on this show.
My dad was on this show
6 or 7 years ago, so you're following in his footsteps.
I know, what an honor. So yeah, I got to be on a set, and then I think it was just very solidified and crystal clear at that point.
Absolutely.
That that's what I wanted.
Yeah. Has it made it easier finding a relationship where someone can score all of your films and add that layer that you might not be able to create yourself?
It's a dream. Not only that, but also produce my albums. What else? I mean, what more could a girl want?
Exactly.
And give me a beautiful son. So,
of course, and I saw
he's in the green room.
Yes, he is adorable. He has the biggest cheeks I've ever seen on a baby.
He got those from
not bigger than hers were.
Not okay. I thought you meant now. I was gonna,
no.
Yeah.
he's
not
very
on
cute.
air, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're good. So I wanted to ask about the latest project you worked on. Well, no, there's a few more in the works, but the one that's getting a lot of attention is Without a Home.
Yes.
And this is in frame. You've been dealing a lot with the problem of homelessness in Los Angeles. Do you want to talk about how that first sort of came into existence for you?
Sure. Growing up in Los Angeles, was constantly surrounded by it and constantly shocked and disturbed and also sort of fascinated by why there were so many homeless people in my neighborhood, and why, I think from the perspective of a child's mind, there's something really innocent and beautiful that just doesn't have any of the social preconceptions about what makes someone homeless, and so it just seemed so wrong that they were homeless and I wasn't. So that's what sparked it, and then that passion and desire to help them grew. And after going to USC, I moved to New York for a year, and then I came back and decided that I needed to make this movie. It was sort of this thing that was always brewing within me, and the desire was really to shed light on the stories of these people, their humanity, and give them a voice that I felt like they weren't necessarily getting.
Yeah. Is there a common thread through the stories that you've found in sort of how they got there, or what's sort of keeping them down, things?
It's a really good question, and I think personal vulnerability is one. I mean, there's so many different types of issues people have between addiction,
There's Julian.
addiction, veterans, mental health issues. But I think that I actually think childhood, like people that had issues in childhood and have a lot of personal vulnerabilities, were something that I find to be a thread between everybody.
Right.
But again, it's across the board.
Right, and then you both helped to take action in the last 2 elections. Will you kind of explain HHH and what that does for the homeless community here?
Sure. So HHH was on the ballot in the big presidential election in November, and it will give. It was actually funded, which is wonderful.
Great.
So it gives $1.2 billion over the next 10 years towards permanent supportive housing to homelessness. So because it was passed, a lot of funding will go into permanent housing, which there's a lot of solutions, but that to me in the homeless community, or the world of those who are trying to help end homelessness, is really considered the most important one.
Sure.
You can't do anything if people don't have permanent housing.
Of course,
so.
of course. Are there other ways to get involved for someone who is interested in helping with the homeless problem? Outside of voting, is there something you can do to get yourself out there and to really help?
I think
What sort of ways, I guess, from the stories that you've heard, were the most helpful to people, causing like a lasting effect?
it's so cheesy, but I think kindness and just decent human behavior, like engaging with another person, smiling, making eye contact. I think giving money is great. It doesn't solve the problem, and I know there's a lot of stigmas about, oh, what if they use it to buy drugs or a drink? Okay, well, what if they do? But I think that decency and kindness and waving are huge and actually underrated. But beyond that, volunteer at a local shelter or donate clothing. But the simplest, easiest thing to do, you can also keep a pair of shoes or a blanket or extra clothes in your car or some food, and when you see someone at a stoplight, you can just hand it to them. I mean, that goes a long way as well.
Absolutely. Blake, is this sort of a passion that you've grown to share as well, helping out the homeless community? Or
Well, I mean, Rachel I got absorbed into her.
Yeah, I don't want to lead you into
I was absorbed into her passion for this sort of activism. I don't think it's an activism that would have found me, but I've learned a lot from the work that she does. I've seen Without a Home many times, and Rachel's spoken on panels, and I've gone and met people and learned, and being involved with some of the short form work that she's doing as a composer has also educated me to what can be done, whether it's on a ballot or some piece of legislation. And of course, just having conversations with her at home about her feelings on the issue of homelessness and maybe a personal encounter that day. So it's very much in my life now. Yeah.
With some of the images that I'm sure you've seen and maybe even were cut, do those things sort of affect, how do those affect your work and I guess just your day-to-day outlook on life? Did it provide any different perspective?
The images that
of the homeless societies.
I think just it's very heartbreaking and humbling, and makes you have a lot of gratitude for what you have. But also, for me, it drives me towards always doing more and never feeling content with what I've done in terms of being able to help people. I think it drives me in just feeling like our purpose in life is to help other people. And the images definitely stay with you, and some of the people in the film aren't alive anymore, so I feel very driven by keeping their memories alive and honoring the passions and the desires that they had to help other people. That was one thing that I found fascinating, was so many there was a lot of addicts that I worked with in the film, and so many of those addicts, like, their biggest passion, even when they were down in their darkest days, they wanted to give back and help other people, and I find that to be really beautiful. And
it is beautiful. So people can get out and vote. They can check out the film Without a Home. We have to go to a commercial right now. Stick around for more. See you after this. Welcome back to CU at USC. Again, we're here with Rachel Fleischer and Blake Collins.
Call me Robert, though.
Start calling him
Please,
Bobby.
we've only
Bobby
met
Collins. It's a great name.
12
Think
minutes
about
ago.
it.
You call me Robert still.
Exactly. I'm sorry, Mr.
That's fine.
My gaff, we'll add it to the reel. Before we finish up talking about the homeless problem, I did want to ask you about what you think the perceived impact of the film is, whether it be your documentary or documentaries very similar. Has it had has it influenced or changed the community or the problem at all? Have people gone out and voted more? Have you seen any impact?
Well, I think, unfortunately, not in the March election, because the voter turnout was just very low. Although we did get that particular bill did pass.
Sure.
We did a PSA with Kristen Bell, and I think that played a large role. in terms of the larger impact that these types of movements have, these types of documentaries have, yeah, I think that one of the best compliments I've ever gotten is that someone came up to me, a lot of people have said this, I will never look at a homeless person the same way. And I think whether it's these campaigns, which in the PSA case had celebrities talking very candidly and in a very earnest, honest way, or a documentary like this where it's not formal and it's kind of gritty, and I think that there is a real opportunity to show people another side and to make them realize that I think that the problem can be so overwhelming that rather than doing anything, people just kind of shut down. But I think that these types of films and movements give people an opportunity to realize that they actually have power to make a change, and to look at people differently. I mean, just the fact that someone will now look at a homeless person as a person instead of a statistic, that to me is huge. I always say no matter how much money gets put into a problem like this, if there isn't a shift in consciousness on a human level, then it doesn't really matter. And I think that these movements and movies have the opportunity to have more of a shift in consciousness, which you can't always track or measure, but I think ultimately has a larger impact on change.
This was your first film, correct? Out of school?
Yes, outside of my 290 movies.
Yes, of course.
Let's not forget those.
Who were some of the filmmakers, directors, or even films that you looked to when you were making this film?
Probably Michael Moore was a huge impact on, I mean, for this type of movie.
Of course.
I love narrative movies and really wasn't a documentary person at all.
Right.
But I love Michael Moore. I loved the documentary Born into Brothels by Zaina Brisky and Ross somebody.
Okay.
But I liked the movies where, I guess without realizing it, where the filmmaker gets involved in a human way. I didn't actually realize I was going to do that in this movie. That's sort of what ends up happening.
Right.
But yeah, I like when filmmakers show up in a human capacity and make change.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear anything else you guys can tell me about that record that you've been recording together for the last several years.
Well, it's gonna be fantastic. aside from that, it's about halfway done.
Okay.
These are songs that Rachel has written, and I'm producing it. We're producing it at home.
We did release a single from it last year. I think last year on iTunes. It's called Hello. And then Blake has also been making an album that he's more than
I have
halfway
one
through.
of them here. This is 200,000. Is that? Am I saying that
No.
or am I just one
This is
of 200?
Yes, this is a limited edition. One
Right,
of two.
right.
No, that's part of the design. It's called A Bell Locks In.
Okay.
It's a 5-song EP,
Excellent.
and that is just a cover. The numbers mean nothing.
Right.
It's a collage that Blake made,
Oh, of course.
which is very cool, I think.
What is like a typical day when you guys are just recording, like at the house?
A typical day. I mean,
Yeah.
well, now it's a bit different
little
because we have a little guy too.
You have the ambient
we have
noise
our
of
our new alarm clock that gets us up
Right.
bright and early, and it's hard to balance that, taking care of a newborn baby with actually making a day of working on music or writing, or when Rachel has shoots. I mean, Julian will have to go with her, and sometimes I can come, and sometimes I can't. What's it like? What's the process like? I think it's different for everybody. What would you say? What's our recording process like?
Well, yeah, Blake will track everything without me, and then we work on vocals together. And sometimes I get frustrated and take it out on him, but it's mostly really fun.
It is fun.
It's fun.
And what style of music did you say that you guys are writing together? What sort of genre?
What sort of genre?
Well,
What sort of genre is your music?
it's, I guess, kind of, both of our music is sort of a 60s rock and roll pop vibe.
Okay.
But I think he sounds like
Traditional, like rock and roll.
60s
Great.
rock and roll. We're both very inspired by the same music, which makes creative conversations to talk about the sound we want very easy, because we basically just love all the same music.
Organic, melodic.
Great.
Rock,
Yeah. What
rock
kind
and
of
stuff.
artists have you guys been listening to that have sort of inspired your sound?
Well, in doing some of the pre-production on Rachel's stuff, we listened to the Angels, right? The Supremes, some of the girl group stuff.
The Ronettes.
Ronettes, a little bit of Motown in there. Just
Great.
it's like as a producer, I want to pick up on the vibe that these songs remind me of. So then I go straight to, okay, if one of her songs reminds me of a Supremes song, let's say, I'll go to that song and listen to it to see if I'm right. And if it does indeed have some parallels, and if it doesn't, I have a good starting point as far as what the instrumentation will be like, what the sonic space should be like. These are all terms that refer to the studio.
You can see it going over my head a little bit. I'm glad you picked up.
That's okay. So if a song, for example, if she gave me a lot of demos that were played on piano, and some of those don't exactly work on piano, so we moved them over to the guitar. And from there, they stayed on acoustic guitar, and most of them got more embellishments. So percussion, bass, electric guitar, and they weren't just, vocal piano. Some of them stayed vocal piano, and that's all right.
Electric Light Orchestra.
Sure.
The Beatles. Amy Mann.
A lot of fun.
Amy Winehouse, for that matter.
That's true.
Does Julian enjoy the music?
He loves it.
Is that what
He
calms
really,
him down?
he actually really does. I mean, it's an easy thing to say yes, he does, but his favorite musician is Harry Nilsson. He loves Harry Nilsson, and there is one song that no matter what, he just calms down. It's called Good Old Desk, and I actually didn't know this Harry Nilsson song. Blake turned me on to it, and no matter what's going on, Good Old Desk.
So that just plays on repeat in your house all
Sometimes
day.
it has
In
to
the
be on
car.
repeat.
Right.
He's got a pretty sizable playlist
Yeah.
full of greats
He
like
likes the Kinks.
the Kinks, the Zombies,
okay.
and he responds to these songs. And I mean, we love them.
We're obviously projecting a little bit.
Right.
We
but
love that
he really
too.
does genuinely.
But
He
this
likes
is the
Eric
house.
Satie,
This is the house that he's
Mozart,
living in
you
right
know.
now. It's a house full of the Zombies and the Kinks and the Mersey
He likes
Beats
to read
and
Freud and Einstein. You
Sure.
know, I mean, he's just
light reading.
very
yeah.
run-of-the-mill kind of a guy.
Absolutely.
His favorite director is Kubrick. I mean, he's really into
Right.
the
That's
symmetry.
Yeah, French
needs-
films, just really
Yeah.
avant-garde kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
loves Truffaut, Godard. Hit or miss with him.
Right. Absolutely. So when you guys aren't working or taking care of Julian, what are some of like your other hobbies that you like to pursue outside of film and music? Is it sporting events? Is it?
Yeah, I'm a big.
Okay, so no.
It's
so
like
no,
you're,
I'm
sort of
big
like,
into
that
lacrosse.
was a joke. Besides that, no. In fact, we've actually joked, what if Julian, our son, is athletic? We will both just be so lost and truthfully a
Well, that's
little
what
bummed,
coaches are for.
but we would
Right.
support whatever he wants unless it's
Sure.
football. Sorry, because if the head stuff, you just can't mess with that.
My mom was the same way.
Yeah, I'm a neurotic Jewish mommy, so my kid's not playing football.
Well, when I'm not working on music,
Yeah.
I like to make art. In fact, I
Right, yeah, this is the
designed.
cover-
This
this-
is the cover. I designed the cover of this EP, but I have a whole series of collages that I've been working on for many years, and that's the medium that I like to work in.
Is it all like digital design or?
Oh no, it's all analog,
Oh, okay,
paper and
great.
scissors and glue.
Excellent.
And
Really
in fact, it
beautiful.
has a parallel with the kind of music that I like to write and record, which is
exactly.
I mean, hardly. There's no. I mean, I'm not doing like EDM or trap or anything like
Right.
that. It's very organic, singer-songwriter stuff, rock and stuff.
Yeah.
And if
What if one morning you woke up and you just were an EDM guy?
yeah, that could happen.
You just got back from Coachella and right.
That's right. Brochella. So, yeah, I like to do that. I like to write poetry, short stories. How about you? What do you like to do?
A lot of similar things. Poetry. I love to write. I act. I love to do photography. I think.
The film you just wrapped on recently that's supposed to come out later this year, is that more of a narrative type story?
Very much a narrative. It's a short film that is a narrative about a breakup, pretty much.
Okay.
Sort of based on a true story.
Excellent.
And it was really cathartic and fun to make it.
Yeah.
It's with this wonderful actress who's a friend of mine, Madeline Zima, who was on Californication. She's really brilliant. And another wonderful actor is a friend named Nick Thurston. So it's just a really intimate character piece.
Yeah. Was that all done sort of like independently funded and
Very
just a small budget?
Small budget. Shot it in my
Great.
bedroom.
Oh, very
8
intimate.
months
Yeah.
pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So Julian's partially in it as well.
Julian
right?
is partially in that. He's in the PSA for Egg Shake Shakes. Yeah,
Wow.
he's
Executive producer.
Yeah. Well, more people do need to see that face. It's a great
right.
face.
Can we
Right.
talk about
Bring
that
him in.
face?
Yeah, we should. We should. But we are running low on time. I just want to ask if there's any last words you guys want to give out, any advice, whether that's to get involved with the home situation or making art or anything like that. If there's one last thing you want to say.
It's so cliche, but don't give up. Like, just be
Yeah.
persistence and patience in terms of doing what you love. I mean, I still have to take those
Right.
those words of wisdom myself.
I agree. If you have something that you love to do and you can't not do it, then do it.
Right.
One of my favorite written works is Letters to a Young Poet, that in a large part has that at its core message about if you what's the passage where if you search inside yourself, I'm paraphrasing, and you ask if you should write, and the answer is I can't remember. I'm butchering that, but the point is, if you can't not do it, do it. Anyway,
it,
and also read Letters to a Young Poet. It's beautiful.
Read Letters to a Young Poet.
True.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That is
you.
all the time we have. Thank you for watching. See you at USC. Check out our very last episode tomorrow night at 6:30. Thank you so much. It has been an excellent time hosting for you. Have a great night.
No! What the heck?
It's a hard game.
Yeah, but addicting. It's already 1:30.
1:30. Mind Games is on.
Wait!